Today we're going to talk about adding and subtracting integers, and the truth is that there are actually a lot of different ways to show how to add and subtract integers. I'm just showing you 2 ways, but there are many more. So if these don't make sense to you, let me know and I can teach you another way in class. Alright, so the first thing we're going to start with is adding integers. Our method 1 is to use a number line. So when you think about the number line, we've got the negatives to the left and the positives to the right. The easy thing to remember is if you're adding a negative integer, you go to the left. That's where the negative integers are. If you're adding a positive integer, you move to the right. Easy to remember because the positive integers go to the right on the number line. So let's do some examples. The first one is negative 6 plus 9. I'm going to start at negative 6. Since I'm adding a positive number, I move to the right. So I start at negative 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My final answer is going to be 3. Let's try this one. We've got negative 1 plus a negative 4. So I start at negative 1. I'm adding a negative number, so I'm going to go to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. I end up at negative 5. And my last example is 4 plus negative 6. So I start at 4. I'm adding a negative number, so I go to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I end up at negative 2. If you like this method and you want to draw a number line all over your classwork, all over your homework, I'm totally fine with that. If that's what you need, go ahead and use it. The second method we're going to talk about is absolute value, or uses absolute value. So this is one of those things where there's rules and you just have to memorize the rules. So if we're adding numbers that have the same sign, 2 numbers with the same sign, we add the absolute values together and we use the common sign. For example, negative 6 plus negative 9. Let's add the absolute values together. So the absolute value of negative 6 is 6. The absolute value of negative 9 is 9. 6 plus 9 is 15. Since they're both negative, our answer is going to be negative 15. Our next example, 3 plus 14. Let's add the absolute values. The absolute value here is 3. The absolute value here is 14. 3 plus 14 is 17, and since they're both positive, it's going to be a positive 17. When the answer is positive, you don't have to make a plus sign, but if it helps you keep your work organized, it's okay if you do for now. If the signs are different, if you're adding a positive number and a negative number, what you do is subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger absolute value. Then you use the same sign as the number with the larger absolute value. That looks like a lot of words, it looks overwhelming. It's not that tricky. Let's do some examples. For the first one, we've got negative 4 plus 6. I'm going to subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger. So our absolute values are 4 and 6. Well, 6 minus 4 is 2, so I know I'm going to have a 2 in here. The greater absolute value is 6, and 6 is positive. So my answer is going to be positive. There were more positives to start with, so my answer is going to stay positive. Here, I'm going to subtract the smaller absolute value from the larger. So I've got 8 and 2. 8 minus 2 is 6. Now let's see what this sign is going to be. Well, the larger absolute value is 8, which is negative. So there were more negatives to start with. Our answer is still going to be negative. 5 plus negative 7. Our absolute values are 5 and 7. 7 minus 5 is 2. We look at the larger absolute value, which is 7. 7 is negative, so our answer is going to be a negative 2. I'll move out of the way a second. The last thing to think about is if 2 numbers are opposites, the sum of a number and its opposite is always going to be 0. Negative 7 plus 7 is 0. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. Negative 400 plus 400 is 0. This vocabulary word, additive inverse, it's not something that you have to know right now, but it's a fancier word for saying opposite. So 7 has an additive inverse of negative 7, and the sum of those 2 numbers is 0.